Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Daniel.
And this is Sam.
And we are the Kwok
Brothers.
Brothers. And in this video, we're going to talk about the eviction moratorium. And there's been a lot of commentary around this topic in terms of this being extended. And this is getting a lot of people riled up. So what Sam and I are going to do as housing experts, as individuals who own real estate, and also we're renters ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to give you guys our commentary and our perspective on everything that's going on, along with what is actually happening. And last but not least, we're going to address some interesting arguments that people are making about this eviction moratorium.
Yeah, and we're going to speak right into the morality. Is it moral? Is it immoral? There are, of course, people who are fans of the eviction moratorium, and equally there are people who are against it. So let's go and quickly run down what's going on, right? The CDC, the Center for Disease Control, went and issued an extension of the eviction moratorium for additional 60 days. Now, again, the eviction moratorium was set to expire, and it was said that that was going to be the last extension ever. Now, of course, you can never really trust the government with anything or any promises.
You gotta learn to trust your government. That's what I do.
And this is more of a targeted eviction moratorium, which really doesn't make a whole lot of difference because it covers 80% of the counties out there. It's targeted in a sense that a county that has high transmission rate is qualified to keep the protection that the CDC is issuing. Another thing is that not all tenants will qualify, mainly from the fact that they have to prove that they're struggling financially, that by getting evicted, they will either be homeless or they have to live in close quarter. There's some certain income threshold. So you'll see all that details down below. We'll go and put some more links of our research, but that's just a quick rundown. And of course, the CDC's eviction moratorium was challenged last week, but surprisingly, the Supreme Court ruled in favor, 5-4, basically saying that CDC's new eviction moratorium extension is being upheld and can be honored in the eyes of the law, which is very, very surprising.
So Sam, that was a pretty good 60-second, 90-second rundown, if I do say so myself. But obviously a lot of individuals are asking us and looking to us for our opinion. What is most likely going to happen in the next 30, 60, 90 days?
I mean, already the CDC's eviction moratorium extension has been challenged by many of the local and lower courts, appellate or circuit courts all across the country. So I would imagine states coming out and saying, no, we're not going to enforce this. Places like Florida, Texas, maybe Arizona, maybe. Tennessee, I can see that happening as well. And you may see the eviction moratorium extension being turned over. Again, a lot of constitutional scholars are agreeing that this is unconstitutional. The CDC has no power, no say
especially with private property.
Absolutely. And the only body of government that can do this is either the executive power through the emergency actions or executive order, but something that's more durable will be a legislative action, actually passing a bill and signing things into law. That's a bit more durable in the eyes of the constitutional process.
Yeah, and let's think about this too. And guys, these are numbers from 6 months ago, but more than 50% of all landlords do not have the cash or credit to be able to survive this extension, to be able to survive them not collecting their rent, to be able to take care of the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, you name it. And obviously in the last 6 months, that number has gotten higher and higher and higher. So of course, a lot of individuals are asking, well, Daniel, what's going to happen? Well, Sam, what's going to happen with the housing market? What's going to happen with landlords? Well, obviously, we're going to see a lot of foreclosures. We're going to see a lot of short sales, potential forbearance.
Here's what's alarming. What's alarming, Daniel, is that they just extended the eviction moratorium, but they did not extend
the mortgage forbearance.
Exactly.
They did not do that.
Yeah, so the landlords that are struggling to make their payments, taxes, insurance, their mortgage payments, come September, they're really going to feel the squeeze because that's when the mortgage forbearance programs stop. And the borrowers, especially landlords who have these loans, are expected to fork up. So they're going to feel the squeeze where they can't collect rent. And they don't have income. Maybe a lot of them may be jobless. They have a lot of the landlords, by the way, they still have their 9-to-5 jobs. They're like you and me, they have jobs.
And let's talk about this, right? If you're gonna if you're gonna do something that's going to help out, quote unquote, the people, well, you gotta help out all people,
right?
Because history will show you time and time again that whenever there's government intervention or third-party intervention, intervening in a market, in a free market format, and you only help out one group in a time where everybody's kind of suffering, well, it creates a domino effect that you virtually kick the can down the road and you make bigger problems in the future. So obviously, having said this, nobody's caring about the landlords pretty much, right? When it comes to these CDC guidelines and whatnot, nobody's caring about the landlord, including a lot of individuals online. I read a lot of articles in the last 2-3 days over the weekend pretty much advocating for a scenario, a situation where landlords don't even exist. If anything, there are people out there right now.
Is that from CNN? Is that what it's
I don't know, right? I like truth. But, it's just like there's a lot of people who are saying that the eviction moratorium being extended is phenomenal, right? And don't get me wrong, there are parts of me where it's like, absolutely, there are renters who have lost their job. They are struggling despite the fact that we're giving out more government assistance now than ever, right? There's people making more money sitting at home than actually working a job, which for me is eyebrow raising, right? Something like that. But, let's talk about that because there's a lot of people advocating for that. People are believing landlords. As a matter of fact, let me pull up this article that I read this morning that I think is, wow, this is kind of extreme. But this individual literally have said that landlords do not produce anything. As word for word, I'm reading this. It says landlords typically don't build the housing, they buy or rent out. Some small-scale landlords do the upkeep themselves, but that shouldn't make the rent their salary for performing this work.
So first argument is that they didn't build the house themselves. Is that the argument?
That's what they're saying. They're saying that they're the ones who didn't build the house, and not only that, but them making such a big profit off of them owning the building and not doing much is immoral. It's not right.
The first case of argument, or the counter argument against that is, sure, they may or may not have built the home, but there was a transfer of value by paying. They bought the house. They took out a mortgage. They risked themselves. They are taking out a huge risk by getting a mortgage, right, and being in debt. For crying out loud. And some, it worked really, really hard, right? They saved up, they took all their life savings and put it in bought this house to provide housing for the public. What's the alternative? The government providing housing? It hasn't worked in the past. It's called North Korea, by the way.
Yeah, and to Sam's point, and thank you, Ben Shapiro, for making that comment. But in all sincerity, right? It's just there is an exchange. It's not like they were given this house for free. Right. It's not like And the second argument I would make is this individual saying, well, these landlords are making exorbitant amount of yield and money just doing nothing, right, and just collecting the rent. Well, for one, you and I have been landlords now for almost 10 years. Are we making exorbitant amount of money through through cash flow, quote unquote? Some months are good, but we've had bills where the maintenance guy came to us and said, hey, we got to fix this. This is not up to code. This is a $6,000 bill, and that's wiped out our cash flow for the entire year. The point of the matter is, you're getting the reward because, like Sam said, you're putting yourself at risk.
Exactly.
Because think about, at the end of the day, what happens if there's a code violation and you have to pay $15,000? Does the tenant pay it? Well, why not? The tenant's the one living there.
Right.
The tenant's the one that's affected by everything that's happening.
Yeah. So, the landlord assumes all risk. And what you're paying, the rent you're paying, is not only the service of receiving housing as well as, the piece of land that inherently has utility value. It's the fact that you don't assume any of the risks. You don't have to fix the, water pipes, breaking and the water heater boiling over and bursting. And, you don't have to do any of that.
Or you don't have to deal with the city. You don't have to deal with the legalities.
You literally have the peace of mind. And of course, are there scumbag landlords out there that don't fix and repair things?
100%.
Absolutely, and shame on them. But the very fact that most landlords want to do the right thing, they want to provide good housing. They have pride in the fact that they provide quality housing, and the fact that you may have had a bad experience doesn't necessarily say that all landlords are evil and bad. And that's just the fact, and that's just truth. Just like, that rule applies just to anything, right? There are bad people in every aspect of life in our industry. So
100%.
You can't just put a broad stroke, right, on every single people or the type of business they're engaged in.
Yeah, and so this individual, I'm actually going to continue this.
Yeah,
but he uses 1970s Vienna as like the ideal, right? So he's making a claim for socialist housing concepts to be implemented in the United States. Pretty much a scenario where there's no private ownership of property, so there's no landlords. The government and nonprofit organizations own all the housing in the country, and the tenants who live there, pretty much their rent is forgiven and all is well. Everybody sings Kumbaya.
Let me ask you guys this, especially in the camera world, in the world of YouTube, who has actually lived in government housing? I'm curious. Who has actually lived in a government housing? Not Nick just raised his hand. Not the military, okay? We volunteered and
well, you guys have freedom. Yeah, you guys made the decision to be in the military. So
right. And it's okay, right? But who actually? We're being serious. Like, who actually lived in a government facility?
Like, we're talking Soviet Russia, right?
Or government projects and actually enjoyed it.
All right. Well, this individual most likely has not lived in that type of scenario.
Yeah, let's take a moment of silence for all those individuals
yeah,
who lived in government housing.
There's actually a really good example, right?
Yeah.
So in the 1930s, New York did this experiment.
Yes.
Right? So the city of New York saw extreme poverty, worse than what we're seeing now. I mean, the homelessness looked like San Francisco, for crying out loud, modern day San Francisco. And at the time, the leaders of New York decided to do something about it.
Yeah.
So they created a program where, hey, this is public housing, this is run by the city, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They've had 90 years to have a go at it.
Yeah.
They're at a point
90
today,
years,
which, by the
baby.
way, 1 out of every 14 New Yorkers
That's longer than
lived.
that's longer than the Soviet Union ever
100%,
existed.
right?
So I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So they did this for 90 years, right? And 1 out of every 14 New Yorkers were living in these public housing units, and it was pretty rough. So let me give you some of the stats that has occurred the last 90 years and what it looks like today, right? Because a lot of these individuals are saying, well, this is the ideal world. Yeah. Like, this is where no one suffers. This is like the thing that we're shooting for, right? So let me read you some stats. And by the way, this is by the Washington Post. So it's not Fox News. It's not CNN. It's not a predominantly red or blue or right or left type of media outlet.
The Washington Post is a little bit left.
It is a little bit left, which actually drives her point even more, right? So the average age of the building systems, right? I'm talking like maintenance structure, right?
Yeah.
Is over 60 years old,
wow.
right? Which means it hasn't been updated in the last 60 years.
Well, you know why? Because there's no incentive. Like, why do it? Because you're just
100%.
Yeah. Why improve? What's the incentive of improving those systems? Right?
Absolutely, right? As a matter of fact, the deferred maintenance is so bad that 90% of all the New York public housing units will not be cost effective to even look at.
Yeah, Nick, can we pull this link up in the video link description below? So for those. Like, we're not putting this out, pulling this out of our butt.
We're not pulling this out of our butt,
This
right?
is from Washington Post.
So it is estimated that it will take the city $31.8 billion over the next 5 years to fix the hole that it's dug itself in the last 90 years.
Yeah.
Take $32 billion to fix the problem that's been occurring the last 90 years. As a matter of fact, it got so bad that Mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, who is, by the way, known as ultra progressive, faced a lawsuit with the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York for failing to not maintain the building's code of conduct. As in,
interesting,
failing to maintain the minimum requirement for individuals to live in. So literally the state, who has access to billions and billions of dollars every single year, could not maintain the basic minimum level of housing that individuals need, right? And you're not talking about granite countertops. You're not talking about nice and fancy things like this individual.
Basic stuff.
Right, like this
Basic
individual
elements.
saying like, hey, it's worked in Vienna, right? Well, no, Vienna, for one, is a terrible example, because why is it that millions of people literally immigrant from Vienna and its surrounding countries to the United States?
Right. Why come here? Right. Why come to the United States?
Exactly. Why Vienna?
Why not go back to? Why not all of us go to Vienna if it works so
100%.
well?
I don't see Middle Eastern refugees going to Vienna. Right.
No,
Sorry.
They all come here for a reason.
They all come here for a reason. I don't see Mexicans going to Vienna. Right.
Yeah.
I just don't see it.
No.
So again, the New York's public housing, billions of dollars, and even they couldn't do it.
So yeah, I mean, public housing. That's a great experiment of public housing that clearly did not work. And I'm willing to bet that not a single government will figure this out. It is up to the individuals. We need decentralized private ownership of property that actually care about the quality housing, and also want and are incentivized, of course, by profit, because that's how capitalism works. Now, of course, there's a little caveat, is that if profit oversteps the well-being and the safety of other people,
that's a problem.
That's a problem.
Yeah,
we're taking it too far to what I would say extreme capitalism. But capitalism inherently, if the focal point of capitalism is for the consumers, is for the benefit of the customers, clients, tenants, etc., then it works beautifully, right? Now, of course, again, there are examples where capitalism, if again taken to the extreme, will fail and will create some
100%.
really bad
then
things.
You have monopoly.
But in the opposite, which is the socialism, which we've seen it, right, an experimented version, right, does not work for housing.
Right.
It's in fact, it's actually more immoral.
Yeah, 100%.
To have socialistic
There's
type of housing.
plenty of examples. Even Section 8, right? Section 8 was birthed out of a socialist kind of group, right?
Yeah.
And Section 8, unfortunately, has the reputation of, oh, this is where, like, that's the ghetto, right? Like, those are the projects. That's where you don't want to live. That's where all the bad schools are.
Yeah.
And that's not the intent, right? That's not what we want, right?
Yeah.
We want individuals in lower income to have as many opportunities as possible to increase, which is why we love capitalism so much, because we grew up that way. Right. So at the end of the day, what I didn't like about this article was, well, and I'm not going to name the person because I'm not here to defame them
or glorify them anyway.
But mostly I don't want to talk bad about them, right? Because at the end of the day, I want to see people for their ideas, not who they are.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I want to argue. The idea, not the person. But he did not give any solution to any of this. Right. So he's like, okay, so eviction moratorium, it's great, but what's the how do we get there?
Yeah.
Right. So you can name all this glorified version and vision of what you want, but if you can't say how we get there, then that's a problem. Now let me talk to you guys why we're making this video, right? It's not to bash anybody, it's not to bash an idea or anything like that, but it's just to protect the idea that you can still make something of yourself in this country, that the opportunities are still very alive and well. And again, that's cliche as it sounds, that is the absolute truth, and we're living testaments to that, right?
Yeah, and the fact that there's people out there that say, oh, the American dream is dead, you can never make it anymore in this country, there's too many pressures, outside pressure. Complete BS, man. I mean, you look at us, right? We immigrated to this country in 1999, little kids, dead broke.
Yeah, our parents had nothing.
Yeah, cultural barrier, language barrier, no network.
Yeah, cockroaches in the kitchen where we first used to live.
It was not a good, we had every disadvantage that I think most immigrants will face, right?
Couldn't speak the language.
Yeah, and the very fact that with many blessings, of course, we had a lot of help from people, mentors, and people who saw something in us. But we also saw something in the opportunity that America has to offer. That is through capitalistic ideas, through the ideas that if you have something valuable to offer to the world, then you too can also be financially successful. If you are educated enough, you understand how the system works, if you know how to play the game of financial literacy, then you too can also have an opportunity to win. And that's what we believe at the end of the day. So speaking of the positive side, next video we're going to come up with is there's actually a hidden opportunity with all this. I know we've been kind of speaking the gloom and doom, but with the eviction moratorium, if you are interested in real estate investing, if you are interested also using real estate as a vehicle to growing your wealth, well, next video we're going to talk about what are some of these hidden opportunities that you could take advantage of and to also help landlords and tenants alike, and also you can be profitable as well.
Create win-win scenarios,
or
right?
Triple win scenarios.
Triple win scenarios.
So if you guys want to catch that video, definitely subscribe, hit the notification button. You definitely want to get notified when we release the video. And tell me guys what you guys think about this video.
Yeah, what do you guys think the eviction moratorium is? Do you think it's moral? Do you think it's immoral?
Yeah.
What do we do, right? What are your thoughts on all this? And I thought about maybe even linking the article that I read, but again, I don't want any negative energy going towards that person. I just want their ideas to be portrayed.
Right. So that being said, guys, share this video, and we'll be here in the next video. See you soon.
Hey guys.